Hey there, night dwellers. Join the Phantom Troupe for a serene escape into dreamland with enchanting sleep stories. Let the calming tales transport you to a world of peaceful slumber and restful nights.
Hey there, I'm Isabella, your sweet storyteller. It warms my heart to have you here with me. Tonight, we're set for an adventure into the world of mystery and suspense. Get ready to be hooked by a story that unfolds in the shadows of the unknown, where every page brings us closer to an unsolved enigma. Before we dive into the gripping narrative, take a moment to let go of the day's events. Inhale deeply, letting the weight of the world lift from your shoulders. Exhale, embracing the soothing calm that surrounds you. As we embark on this mysterious tale, picture yourself on the edge of anticipation, eager to uncover the secrets that lie ahead. The story we're about to unfold draws inspiration from real-life enigmas, weaving a tapestry of intrigue that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Feel the tension in your muscles dissipate with each breath. With the day behind you and relaxation setting in, let the excitement of the unknown heighten your senses. Together, we'll navigate through the twists and turns of this suspenseful narrative. Now, as the world fades away and the mystery unfolds, allow the soothing rhythm of my voice to guide you into a tranquil state. Stay tuned as we step into the mysterious unknown, where every moment holds the promise of revelation. Joanna Yeates was a 25-year-old landscape architect who had recently moved into a new flat in the Clifton area of Bristol, England. On December 17th, 2010, she was last seen leaving her workplace in the evening. She went out to meet friends for drinks, but left early, returning home after walking through the icy streets of the city. After that, her whereabouts were unknown. When she failed to return to her flat and did not respond to phone calls or texts, concern began to grow among her family and friends. Joanna lived with her boyfriend, Greg Reardon, a fellow landscape architect. The couple had been dating for several years, and their relationship seemed stable and loving. Reardon had been away visiting family for the weekend, and it was when he returned to Bristol that he discovered Joanna was missing. On December 19th, 2010, after several days of frantic searching, Joanna's body was discovered in a snow-covered area near Longwood Lane, on the outskirts of the city, just a few miles from her home. The discovery of her body brought an immediate police response, and the investigation into her murder began. What followed was a highly publicized case that would involve months of media coverage, wrongful accusations, and ultimately the conviction of the true perpetrator, Vincent Tabak. The first step for investigators was to piece together Joanna's movements on the evening of her disappearance. She had left her office on December 17th, 2010, and walked through the streets of Clifton. She was seen by a number of witnesses walking home, and police were able to establish that she had returned to her flat. After that, her phone went silent. There were no further indications of what had happened to her until her body was discovered in a secluded area a few days later. The investigation initially focused on people who were close to Joanna. Her boyfriend, Greg Reardon, was naturally the first person of interest. However, Reardon had been away at the time, and he had an alibi for the evening in question. It soon became clear that there was no evidence connecting him to the crime, and the police began to look for other leads. Christopher Jefferies, Joanna's landlord, quickly emerged as a suspect. Jefferies, a retired schoolteacher in his 60s, lived in the flat next door to Joanna's. While his relationship with her was described as cordial, he was seen as an unusual and somewhat eccentric figure, which would later play a role in his becoming the focal point of media attention. Jefferies was arrested on December 30th, 2010, and held in custody as police investigated further. He was questioned for several days, during which the police sought to find any evidence linking him to the murder. His arrest came amid a wave of media speculation, with the press focusing on his peculiar demeanor and personal habits. The media coverage surrounding Jefferies was intense, and many outlets reported on his eccentricities in a way that suggested he might be guilty, even before any evidence had been produced. The media's portrayal of Jefferies was largely based on his appearance and personality, rather than any direct evidence linking him to the crime. Photographs of Jefferies were splashed across newspapers, accompanied by headlines that hinted at his potential guilt. Some publications focused on his appearance. He had a distinctive look with white, unkempt hair and a somewhat stiff manner, and suggested he might have had a dark side. However, none of this was based on concrete evidence. Jefferies was soon released without charge in early January 2011, but by then, the damage to his reputation had already been done. He became the victim of what is often referred to as a trial by media. The public perception of his involvement in the crime had been largely shaped by media coverage, and it would take months for the truth to emerge. His case would later be cited as an example of how the media could ruin lives, even when individuals were innocent. The investigation eventually shifted focus when forensic evidence began to point towards a different suspect, Vincent Tabak, a Dutch engineer who lived in the same building as Joanna. Tabak had initially come under suspicion because of his proximity to the crime, but it was only through a combination of forensic evidence and witness testimony that investigators were able to piece together his involvement. Tabak had a prior history of being socially withdrawn, and although he was well liked by his neighbors, few people knew him well. His behavior was considered unremarkable, which made him a less likely suspect in the eyes of many at the time. However, it would later emerge that Tabak had been involved in a number of troubling incidents leading up to the murder. The breakthrough in the investigation came when police discovered that Tabak had left his DNA on Joanna's body. They also discovered that he had made a number of phone calls in the hours before and after her death, which placed him near the scene of the crime. These clues, combined with testimony from a number of witnesses who saw Tabak near the vicinity of Joanna's flat, eventually led to his arrest. Tabak was charged with the murder of Joanna Yeates in January 2011. He was tried at Bristol Crown Court in October 2011. During the trial, it was revealed that Tabak had been sexually obsessed with Joanna, and he had been watching her for some time. On the night of her murder, he had followed her home from a bar where she had been meeting friends. After a brief encounter outside her flat, Tabak had entered her home and attacked her. Tabak's motive was never entirely clear, but it was suggested that he had been struggling with a deep-seated sexual fixation on Joanna, and when she rejected his advances, he became enraged. In the end, he strangled her to death and disposed of her body in the countryside. In November 2011, Vincent Tabak was found guilty of the murder of Joanna Yeates and was sentenced to life imprisonment. The case was a tragic and disturbing one, but it also underscored the importance of thorough police work and the dangers of relying on media-driven assumptions about guilt. The murder of Joanna Yeates and the wrongful arrest of Christopher Jefferies led to intense public scrutiny of the media's role in criminal cases. The coverage of Jefferies' arrest was criticized as being sensationalized and deeply unfair. Many newspapers, including The Sun and the Daily Mail, published articles that portrayed Jefferies as a weird and eccentric figure, insinuating his guilt without any actual evidence. Jefferies later sued several newspapers for defamation, and in 2012, he was awarded significant damages. The case served as a stark reminder of the potential for media outlets to tarnish reputations based on little more than speculation. It also highlighted the dangers of trial by media, where public opinion is shaped by journalists and commentators rather than the judicial system. The media's focus on Jefferies' appearance and eccentricities became a defining feature of the case. His peculiar demeanor was often highlighted as suspicious, even though there was no direct evidence linking him to the crime. This kind of coverage further fueled public speculation, making it impossible for Jefferies to defend himself in the court of public opinion. In the wake of the case, several media outlets apologized for their role in the vilification of Jefferies, and it prompted calls for a review of how the press covers criminal cases. The importance of fair reporting and respect for the judicial process was highlighted as key lessons from the tragedy. The murder of Joanna Yeates had wide-ranging implications for the British legal system and for the way media interacts with high-profile criminal cases. The wrongful arrest of Christopher Jefferies and the subsequent media frenzy shed light on several issues, including the ethics of journalism, the potential for wrongful accusations, and the human cost of public speculation. In the legal realm, the case underscored the necessity of thorough investigations and the need to protect the integrity of the judicial process. It also revealed the dangers of allowing public opinion to influence legal outcomes. While the police were ultimately able to arrest and convict the correct perpetrator in Vincent Tabak, the case also raised concerns about the initial handling of suspects and how quickly authorities can be swayed by media pressure. On a social level, the case highlighted the emotional toll that a wrongful accusation can have on individuals. Christopher Jefferies' life was permanently altered by the media's portrayal of him as a suspect, and his name became synonymous with wrongful arrests and media injustice. The stress and isolation that Jefferies experienced during the investigation were immense, and it took months for him to clear his name. His case serves as a cautionary tale for anyone who finds themselves at the mercy of public opinion before they are proven guilty. The murder of Joanna Yeates was a devastating tragedy that shook the community and captured the public's attention. The case ultimately concluded with the conviction of Vincent Tabak, who had brutally taken Joanna's life. However, The investigation was marred by the wrongful arrest of Christopher Jefferies and the damaging media coverage that followed. The case served as a powerful reminder of the potential for injustice when media sensationalism is allowed to overshadow the truth. The aftermath of the case prompted reflection on the responsibilities of both the media and the legal system in ensuring justice is done. While the true perpetrator was eventually brought to justice, the lasting impact on those affected, particularly Christopher Jefferies, remains a testament to the dangers of rushing to judgment without regard for fairness and due process.